Yeah. Let's start it formally. So
we are waiting for our.
yeah, he'll be back in any second. Okay. Are we on air?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone out there. Hello, everyone here in the room. Welcome to this slightly improvised session of Unconditional Basic Income Europe. But as we said, this is basically an informal gathering to get warm for the big meeting tomorrow. And we have the pleasure to have Andy here. Andy, I guess you will present yourself. He will talk about how to put basic income on the blockchain. And for all of us who don't really know what this blockchain thing is, he will also explain it in a way that all of us understand. So, Andy, the floor is yours.
Cool. Nice to see you all. Nice to meet you all. Hi. So it's a small group today. It's informal, right? So if there's any questions, please interrupt me. We can have a bunch of questions at the end, but if you have one in the middle, please raise your hand and we can talk about it. Because this is a lot of concepts all at once. So let's start with the blockchain. Has anybody here heard of the term blockchain? Is that you too? Okay, cool. And then the rest of you never heard of it before. So nice. A blockchain is a fairly new innovation from the last 10 years, and it's an innovation in database technology. So a database is, just to be super clear, it's a computer, or it's a place where you store data, of course, for reading and writing. And it is behind the scenes for basically every aspect of the internet. For instance, Facebook, anytime you post a picture or a status, it's put into a database. And then anytime you look at your friends' pictures or statuses, you read from the database. So you're always reading and writing to and from and to the database. And so in the old model, databases have been around for a long time, since almost as long as computers have been around. And in the old model, on the internet, the way that databases have worked is they are centralized. So you have one database, like for instance, Facebook. This is the database, and everybody's computer connects to it to read. It's pretty standard, sort of like the town square or something like that. And this is basically one computer that Facebook owns. And so the data lives in Facebook. It lives in the United States, for instance, because Facebook is a US company. And for decades, this has been how data is distributed over the internet. Computers connecting to one specific computer to read and write data. The blockchain is a new type of database. It doesn't have this type of central model. There's a bunch of problems with this, and I'll explain a little bit in a minute. But the basic difference is that in a blockchain, you have the same thing, a bunch of computers, but they all connect to each other. It's a network of computers. So your one computer, it might be connected to 3 different computers, which are all connected to different computers, and they all are connected to each other. And this is the new way that data is stored. So what happens is, rather than one computer storing all the data, these computers, they all work together as a team, and they maintain a database. So, for instance, if I want to post on Facebook here, everybody in the world sees what I'm doing, and they update their local copy of my data. So everybody works together, and they all share data. And that means that as you can see here, there is no one person responsible for the data, for keeping the data. It's something that is collectively maintained as a group. And this idea of collectively maintaining a database has completely changed the foundation of the internet. It's a new way of looking at the internet that has never been seen before, and it changes all sorts of ideas about data ownership and where data lives. Because here we can see that the data lives in the United States because Facebook is the United States. But here, if this computer is in Sweden, and this computer is in South Africa, and this computer is in the United States, and they're all talking to each other, working together, where does the data live? It lives on the internet. It doesn't really live anywhere. It's supranational. So this concept of things just living on the internet rather than in one specific place, and of computers working together to maintain a database where you can read and write, it changes the way that, if you're connected to this and you're working with this, it changes the way, like, what kind of citizen you are. Because when you're connected to this, the country that you're living in is not really important. It's extremely easy to cooperate over international borders when you're using one of these databases. It's frictionless, basically. When you're in the normal internet, or you're in the normal world of flesh and blood, cooperating over an international border is somewhat difficult, especially in the old financial system. Sending money across countries is always going to be more difficult than sending money within a country. Whether it's some other company or you, somebody has to deal with that, and it's difficult. But here, it's trivially easy. There is no concept of countries. So the idea of cooperating internationally is the default. You're always cooperating internationally when you're using one of these databases. By the way, this is a blockchain. So a database that is maintained in this way is called a blockchain. So this concept of international and global by default is really, really interesting, because the first thing that comes into your head, the first thing that comes into many people's heads is when you think of cooperating internationally, it's big problems in the world, big macro scale changes to the world, particularly things like climate change action. And the second one that comes into a lot of people's head is UBI. UBI is something that, a very common criticism of UBI is implementing it in one place and not implementing it somewhere else is unfair. And it's not actually universal. It's not actually unconditional if it's only for the people of one country. So the idea of a database that is global by default and universally accessible by default, any computer can connect to this, is a very, very interesting place to start thinking about global problems and international cooperation, especially for things like UBI. So this type of setup is, it has a lot of interesting political implications at the macro international scale. So that's a little bit about blockchains. I don't really think, is there any questions so far, by the way? We all like what we're hearing so far? It's good, yeah?
How do you secure the data?
How do you secure it?
I mean, security of the data. I mean, if you are making some transactions, let's say.
Well, if you,
there's no authority, I mean.
yeah, exactly. So, how do I explain this? So, because it's on every single computer, if you, like, say I'm an attacker, right? And I attack your computer, but I make a transaction that is illegal, like, for instance, actually, I'll come back to your point in 1 second, but the blockchain, the first use case of the blockchain was Bitcoin. It's the most famous blockchain in the entire world. And Bitcoin, as we know, is money. And so what the blockchain is, in the case of Bitcoin, is a ledger of balances. So you have 1 Bitcoin, you have 2 Bitcoins, he has 1,000 Bitcoins. It's a ledger, just like in a bank. it's no surprise that a bank also uses lots and lots of databases. So to get back to your question, if I want to send 1 Bitcoin to you, but I don't have it, I don't have a Bitcoin in my balance, then that's obviously an illegal transaction. It's not correct, right? So if I broadcast to the network and I say, I'm Andy and I want to send a Bitcoin to, what's your name?
Marty.
Marty? Agi?
Yeah, A-L.
Oh, Ali. Nice to meet you. If I am Andy and I want to send a Bitcoin to Ali, and it's an illegal transaction, if I send it out, everybody in the network can automatically see that it's not true, it's illegal. And they know not to write it to the database. But if it is legal, then they know to write it. I'm sort of skipping this whole concept of mining, which is how transactions get validated. There's certain so we'll say. And then, so here we see that this is still different from this. It's not centralized, but it's not the same as what I was describing before, right? There's a few kind of nodes, a few computers that are different from the other ones because everyone is connecting to them. Anybody can be one of these, and what they do is they validate transactions. So if I kind of announce that I'm sending a Bitcoin to you, what I really do is I send it to all of these guys, and then they compete with each other to see who will be the one that gets to validate it. Because if you validate the transaction, you get a small reward. So what we're doing is we're using the concept of self-interest and profit-seeking, because people want that small reward for validating the transaction. And then we allow anybody to come and validate these transactions. And the idea is that if you misbehave, then I can just go and talk to you instead. There's no cost associated with it's easy for me to just talk to this one instead. These guys don't compete with each other, and they secure the network. So the idea is that if any one of them is bad, all the other ones can still be good and kind of push them out. Does that make sense? It's sort of like there's a lot here, and I don't like all the way into how blockchains work, but the basic idea is that many computers are kind of users, and some computers are administrators. And there's nothing special about them. Anyone can be one. You could do it with your computer if you wanted to. And they compete with each other to be the most fair, I guess, and to be the best administrator. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions so far? I'm sure if anybody online knows about blockchains and is yelling at me right now, just know it's super high level, right? The most important idea that I'm trying to get across is this concept of global accessibility. The data doesn't live in any place. For the purposes of basic income, this is the most important concept. I'll read this here. Okay, so we have a database, and it doesn't really live anywhere, and it's globally accessible, right? How do we build a basic income on top? So before, like I said, the first use case of blockchain was a ledger of Bitcoins, of coin balances. So Bitcoin blockchain can only support Bitcoin. That's all it can do. It's just make Bitcoin work. But there are other blockchains that came after Bitcoin that advanced the concept of blockchain quite far, and they can do a lot more than what Bitcoin can do. And one of them is called Ethereum. This is the, I guess you could say, the state of the art in blockchains for now. What you can do in Ethereum is you can have many, many, many different coin ledgers, right? So I could, it's trivially easy, it's extremely easy for me to make up a new type of currency. I could do it in 5 minutes if I wanted to. It obviously wouldn't have any value. Nobody cares about it. It would be like if I made up a currency right here in this room and started giving everybody currency and writing it on a piece of paper. It doesn't really mean anything, but I can do it. You can do it on a blockchain too. You can do it on the Ethereum blockchain. Just so that people, if they want to look it up later, that's how you spell it.
Can you write in big letters?
Sure. Yeah. Sorry about that. If you want to look it up later, it's an extremely active online community. So on the Ethereum blockchain, like I said, you can make arbitrary currencies. And this fact of the blockchain, that you can do any currency and it's automatically globally accessible, like I said, is what makes Circles interesting, because Circles is a network of individual currencies. Okay, and what does that mean? When you sign up for Circles, when a new account signs up for Circles, with Circles, it's an app, right, that you download on your phone. Or sorry, it will be an app that you download on your phone. Right now, it's a research project, but in the future, it will be an app that you download on your phone and you make an account. And when you make this account, automatically a new currency is created, and it is uniquely tied to you. So it's my name is Andy. If I signed up, Andy coin gets created. Luve back there, if he signs up, Luve coin is created, unique to him. If Ali signs up, Ali coin gets created. Okay, so it's a whole bunch of personal currencies, we call them. So that's interesting. Oh, and the other thing, of course, these are UBI currencies, right? So every second or every time period, new currency is created, new currency units, and they are awarded to the associated person. So for Luve coins, every 5 minutes, we'll say 5 Luve coins are created and given to him. And for me, every 5 minutes, 5 new Andy coins are created and given to me. That doesn't mean that other people can't hold it. I can transfer some Andy coin to you. You can hold it. You can trade it around if you want to. But all new Andy coin is given to me. And this is the fundamental characteristic of what makes our system UBI. Any new account signs up, they get a unique currency, and it is minted at a regular schedule and delivered directly to them. And this is a completely different way of looking at money creation, right? Typically, money is created by loaning out interest-bearing debt. That's in the modern day, that's how we create money. It's created privately by commercial banks in the form of loans and fractional reserve banking. But in this one, it's created at the grassroots. It's created for individual people and delivered straight to them, and there's no debt associated with it. There's no, because there's no interest-bearing debt, there is no, oh, you have a question?
You can continue.
Okay, yeah. Because there's no interest-bearing debt, there is no prime directive to grow. You don't have to be constantly growing all the time because there's no debt associated with the money. It's just printed and delivered. And it is exactly, if you know what helicopter money is? It's literally the same thing as helicopter money, but it's just for citizens rather than for banks.
The growth is at the rate at 2%, 5%, or is linear?
So it's this is a good question. There is, so it's minted at a regular schedule, like for instance 5 per minute, but at the same time, you're right, there is an inflation. So 1 year from now, it might be 6 per every 5 minutes, whereas now it's 5 for every 5 minutes, right? So there will be an inflation rate, so more and more will be minted over time, and this is just like modern day inflation, it's to disincentivize hoarding, and it's to encourage you to use it and not try and keep it. It's to encourage economic activity, basically, just like modern day inflation. But it will be, I would say, it will be well known what it is, and it's not like today, inflation isn't really something that you can control. It's kind of something that you try to coax in one direction or another. But in this system, it will be like automatic, and you will know exactly what the inflation rate is.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Any other questions right now before I move on?
Okay, so this is not the only solution. Have you studied other options?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. This is if you wanted to do it on the blockchain.
No, I know about blockchain, I know about Ethereum, but I'm not sure that this is the best solution for this case.
Oh,
Have you
sure.
studied other options?
You mean like public policy or something like that?
No, other consensus mechanism, for example.
Consensus mechanism, like what? Like not using a blockchain, you mean?
No, consensus mechanism is the rules that different nodes agree between them to manage the transactions, etc.
Yeah. So in Circles is very agnostic when it comes to the technology that it runs on top of. By the way, I don't even know if I said, but this system is called Circles.
Yes.
So if some other consensus mechanism is created that works better for this type of solution, then Circles could gladly run on top of that. Now, is Circles the best type of?
You mean that you are experimenting?
Yeah, oh yeah,
It
totally.
doesn't mean that this is the final solution, right?
Oh, definitely. This is a research project, for sure. This is very, very new concept. I mean, really, all of blockchain is a research project.
Yeah.
People in this industry pretend like it's a much bigger deal than it actually is. It's really all very new. And if something arrives and if some sort of globally accessible database that isn't a blockchain becomes the most popular one in the world, then we would totally use that. We don't care about Ethereum, for instance, specifically. Does that answer your question? Or are you talking more about like the idea of having individual currencies?
No, yeah, also about that, because of course you will have some problems concerning scalability, etc. So there's a lot of this
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
already solved.
Totally, yeah. It's a big unanswered question, and scalability and like distributed and decentralized systems is something that Circles can't solve, and so we have to figure out. We have to just pay attention and see who else will solve it, and then use their technology, basically. Go ahead.
I'm quite unfamiliar with this concept, but that's why my questions are quite stupid. My understanding is this personal currency is like personal computer. Everybody is having their own currency, right?
Yes.
And then within time, it's increasing the number of
Units.
So volatile or units is increasing, but how they are connected?
Glad you asked. That is the next step. You're right. Yeah.
I thought I missed it.
No. So far, you're right. What we have is not a very useful system, because all we have is a bunch of people with personal currencies. But how do we know? How do we know what to do with them? How do we trade? How does any of this work? Right. This is never how money has worked in the past.
Who will value them?
Exactly. So this gets us into the next component of Circles. So far, what we have is personal currencies, a whole bunch of them, and now we need to tie them together into a network. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that they work together in concert, and they create one form of useful money. Because this is sort of like internal language for Circles. You have currency and you have money. Currency is like a coin. Money is like the dollar, right? Money is useful. Currency is just a thing. We need to turn currency into money. That's kind of what we're doing when we link them all together into a network. So why do we want to link them all together? The reason is because, by the way, who sees a problem with the system so far? Right? Yeah, it makes no sense. It's preposterous. I'm curious, what is the biggest problem that you see so far? Right.
The developer team, I don't know.
The developer team?
Yeah, I don't know how they will decide to write the codes, and maybe they will change the codes.
Oh, that's interesting that you should mention that.
Fair for everybody, the same code for everybody.
Yes, it will be. So I'm glad you asked that. One aspect of the blockchain is that if you write a computer program and you put it on the blockchain, you can't change it. You just simply can't change it. So if I write code, and it's also completely open source, it's not a secret. You can see all of the code on the blockchain. So if I write some code, and then other experts in the community, they read it and they agree that it's fair and it does what I said it's going to do, and then I deploy it and I give you kind of the address of where it lives, there's no changing it after that. It will be fair forever, and it will do exactly what it says it's going to do forever. This is the most exciting aspect of blockchains, the idea of provably fair computer programs. Because in the old model, the Facebook model, if they're running some computer code, you have to trust them that it's going to do what they say it's going to do, but you have no way of verifying it. In the new model on a blockchain, you can see for yourself what it's going to do, and you can know with absolute certainty that it is doing what you think it's doing. There's no question about it. So the developer team could be completely anonymous, and the code could still be completely trustworthy. But I'll tell you, the developer team it's a good group of people. So any other problems? You see
By now we see trust.
Yeah.
How can I trust your private currency?
Bingo. Our problems?
How can you trust?
Yes, it is a private currency. So how can I trust your currency? I watched the site before I go here.
Oh,
So
It's about trust or about the value?
it's about the lack of trust.
In technical terms,
I
it's not a problem.
No,
How
but they're actually very closely related.
No, because you have an asset, this coin or whatever, and it must have a value. If you just have the assets and you cannot buy something,
yes,
it's useful.
it's similar
It's
to
kind
the
of trust
question.
that you are talking, not about the
Confidence.
security.
Yeah.
No. Trust between private coins.
So I'll move on to the next chapter, I guess you could say. And like you said, it's about trust. And it's about value too, and you'll see how they're related. So the biggest problem so far in the system that we could introduce is the idea of fake accounts. It's very, very common on Facebook and other social media sites, all sorts of websites, to make fake accounts. Make two accounts, right? One where everybody knows you, you're sort of public, and you do whatever you want. And then a second one where you're anonymous and you maybe have a completely different personality, right? Having fake accounts. Making fake accounts in a UBI system is not acceptable, right? Because you would get two UBIs. It would be completely unfair, and it would cause the entire system to break down because everybody would just be on a race to make as many fake accounts as they could, and then there'd be too much money, and it wouldn't be useful. So we need a way to deal with the problem of fake accounts. And when I come to you with some currency, you need a way to trust that it's real money. And the way that you decide that it's real money is this currency associated with one human being, and is it their primary account? Is it their public-facing persona on the internet? This is the problem of trust. Why should I trust your money, right? And so the way that Circles solves this is with a trust graph. So it's funny that I keep drawing the same pictures, but these are accounts, and they're all private money, right? They're all individual currencies, personal currency, we call it. Any user in the system can make a choice to trust the currency of any other user in the system. And when you write it into the database, there's a database of trust, right? It's really a trust database, like I said. What you're saying is, I consider this money real money. I know for a fact that it is associated with a person who's honest. Let's say it's your mom. You trust your mom. If your mom made an account, she said, this is my account, I'm not lying to you, you trust it. This is real money, okay? Same thing with your best friend or somebody you've known for a long time before you ever found out about Circles. Somebody you just met, you don't know if they made a fake account or not. You don't know them very well. But somebody that you trust, you really trust in the real world, it's safe to make this kind of relationship. And you say, I know that this is real money. This is real to me. And it's very likely that they would trust you as well. What does trust do? When you say to the system that I consider this real money, what you're allowing, what the rule that the system starts enforcing is a rule of exchange, a rule of one-to-one exchange. Anybody who has this currency that you trust is allowed to come up to you over the system and exchange that currency for any currency that you have. So if I have sorry, say this is Bob, right? This is me, Andy. This is Dave. And this is Carol. For the folks at home, I can't really write this big because it's a graph, but I'll kind of say it out loud. Here we have Bob. Here we have Andy. Here we have Dave. And here we have Carol. Bob has 10 Carol coin. Dave has 10 Andy coin. And Bob trusts Andy coin. This means that Dave, without asking Bob's permission, can come and exchange his Andy coin for her Carol coin. And so at the end of the transaction, if it's for 5 coins, oops. End of the transaction, Dave now has 5 Carol coin and 5 Andy coin, and so does Bob. This is an automatic thing. And the reason that it's automatic is because Bob trusts Andy coin. So to him, Andy coin is fine money. It's okay to be exchanged at a one-to-one exchange rate. This is safe because it's real money. It's not a bad thing. It's like if I took out a euro and I took out a €5, you have a €5, and I said, do you want to swap? As long as it's not fake money, it doesn't really make a difference to you. It's fine. It all works the same.
But he trusts Carol too, I guess.
Yeah, that's how he got the coins. Because you're right, he wouldn't have it if he didn't trust it.
And also they should trust to both of them.
So why would Dave want to do this? Why would he want to come and do this automatic swap? And the reason that he would want to do this is to perform a transitive exchange, or a mediated exchange, we also call it. So what a transitive exchange is, it allows 2 strangers to interact with each other, and both of them only deal with currency that they trust. So in our example, let's say that we have, who are we missing? Let's say that Dave wants to deal, actually, I'm going to make this a little bit more simple. But are there any questions so far? You understand the whole one-to-one exchange concept?
Just to resume, you are trying to create several circles of trust or one big circle of trust?
Each individual actor in the system creates their own circle of trust. But like the real world, they often overlap.
So they are separated circles of trust.
They're all in one database. So if you trust me, everybody else can see and everybody else can sort of take that information into account.
It's layers of circles.
Yeah, it's overlapping circles. I would say.
How do you know that ND currency and Carol currency is equal?
It's a rule that's imposed by the system, and the reason that it's imposed is to create one currency in the end. In the end, when everybody's connected to everybody, we all have one currency, even though they're individual. By treating them as equal, they become equal, basically.
But what about the rate of inflation in ND currency and Carol currency?
They
introduce more or less?
No, they're inflated at the same rate. It's a rule.
Everybody
Yeah,
should.
yeah, everybody is the same. Yeah, they all operate according to the same rules.
And is there any tangible exchange because of this? They are just changing money, but they are not changing any tangible or things.
Like buying things, you mean?
Buying service or things.
Yeah, totally. The point of this money is to do real things in the real world. I'll explain how it works right now, actually. Any other questions so far?
Too many, in fact.
Okay.
Are you using some semantic concepts in here? Or
Semantic, what do you mean?
semantic web?
Oh, semantic web concepts? Not explicitly. I think that it's definitely sort of related, but it's not something that directly went into the design.
So where do you store this information about trust?
On the blockchain.
On the blockchain itself?
Yeah. So, actually, I want to use the classic. So,
Andy, we have a question here from Waldi. Is the trust graph related to PGP web of trust?
No.
No. I mean, it's similar. PGP does operate on a web of trust, so I would say that the network looks a lot like the pictures that I've been drawing, where it's a bunch of nodes and they're all connected to each other, but it doesn't actually use the same technology.
Can I ask, what is the web of trust?
You mean the PGP web of trust?
The PGP web of trust.
It's about public-private key encryption, and it's
Exchange of keys.
yeah, it's about key exchange basically.
So
So
my public key and your
So- it allows if you send me an identifier, like a public identifier, over the internet, I don't actually know for sure if I'm talking to you or I'm talking to somebody who's impersonating you. So a good way for me to validate that it's you is to look, who do I know that also says that this is really you?
Okay.
And so it's a social network of different people endorsing people's keys,
Okay.
people's public identifiers.
But you can do the same concept with the blockchain, but
Mhm.
decentralized. So you don't
Yeah.
need to have this kind of.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so this is a super simple example. As we can see here, well, actually, if you can't see, I'll tell you. We have Alice in the middle, Alice in the middle, Bob down here, and Carol over here. Carol trusts Alice, and Alice trusts Bob. We've got trust, it looks like this. Okay, now money always moves in the opposite direction of trust, and you'll see why in a second. Let's say Carol has an orange, that she's selling. She sells oranges. And Bob wants to buy them. The only thing that Bob has is his personal currency, his Bob coin. Carol does not know Bob, so she does not know if it's fake currency or if it's real money associated with a real person. Because she doesn't know, she cannot accept it. Luckily for them, Carol trusts Alice. She knows Alice. She's known Alice for years. She knows that this is a real account with real money. And Alice trusts Bob. She knows Bob. She's known Bob for years. She trusts that this is real money too. Now, Bob wants to work with Carol, wants to do business with Carol. And because there is a connection between them, he's able to. So if the orange costs 1 coin, what Bob can do is he can go to Alice and he can say, listen, I need 1 of your coins, and he'll swap. So now she has 9 and 1 Bob coin. We don't have to imagine very complicated relationships here to find somebody that is connected between you and a stranger.
But I don't trust everybody I'm 2 hops away from on Facebook.
Trust. If you trust your mom, and your mom trusts her neighbor, and her neighbor trusts whoever.
But then I'm not 2 hops from everybody else in the network. I'm only 2 hops from this much, much smaller thing of trusted people.
What do you mean?
Well, you said, I mean, the idea of this chain of trust is to get you connected to other people. And you said you connected to other people by 6 degrees, or maybe only 2 degrees on Facebook. But you're not connected to people who you have this chain of trust with by that many degrees.
Well, this doesn't exist, right? So it would be something that sort of emerges over time. And as circles become more and more popular, then you become more and more connected to people. So at first, you wouldn't be connected to anybody. But as you add trust to the graph, as you add relationships, then more and more people become sort of accessible to you as money you can spend. Does that make sense?
Well, if you actually trust everybody that is connected to.
You only trust people that you're directly connected to. You don't have to trust people that you're indirectly connected to.
Well, so I can't connect with people that I don't trust.
Well, you can
That's really gonna.
You can transitively. Sorry, you came in a little late, so I don't actually know how much context you have. So how do we back up?
Yeah, but it's clear that if you don't have a big circle of people,
Oh, okay.
no, already your circle of trust will be very,
Yes,
very
absolutely.
small.
Yes.
The chances that you use your assets to do something real, it's more complicated.
This is definitely true. And I'll get to how we solve that in a few minutes, but this is like I would call this the primary usability problem.
My understanding is with the transaction, the parties do not have to trust each other. The issue is they need trustable currency. I mean, where Alice life or where the other one life. I mean, they don't know each other and they don't trust each other maybe.
You mean these two?
But the issue is not the trust between the two parties within the transaction, but the issue is the currency used is whether it's trustable by both parties or not.
Yes. Well, it needs to be trustable by everybody in this connected link, right? So remember, she only gets currency that she trusts. In this case, it would be Davecoin. So as long as there's some sort of relationship between her and him, then he can do what he needs to do, which is perform these swaps until she gets what she wants, which is Davecoin.
So the party within the transaction, I mean, Bob and Carol do not have to trust each other.
No.
But if Bob has trustable currency, then Carol accepts it and sends the origin. So it's a kind of closed reference system.
Yeah, you can say that. But remember, everybody's always only receiving currency that they trust. But there's just intermediaries in the exchange.
Sure.
Andy, we have a question here from Elizabeth about trust and fake accounts. What if blockchain could be created in each community, perhaps with a geographic division per district or per municipality, or even smaller, completely owned by the community in which they are charge of their policies?
This is great. Who is that answer?
Elizabeth Andra.
You are very quick, Elizabeth. This is actually this is directly related to the primary usability problem. Yeah. This is what we're trying to talk about when you ask is how do we form groups? How do we form communities and sort of higher order social relationships? And like I said,
but this is a natural thing. You will have a
it's something that people do. It's something that people
a reality.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that we already do. So we want to represent it on this network somewhere. And like I said, I'm going to explain it in a minute, but I feel that we'll be jumping ahead right now. So let me just answer more questions.
Sorry, I didn't read all the question.
Oh.
And have its own local currency created.
Yep.
And all accounts could be certified, only proved by the person, resident identification, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For example,
you're right on. Yeah, you're very quick. You know exactly what's going on. And like I said, I'll get to that in 1 minute, or in a few minutes or something.
Okay.
More questions, go ahead.
Well, Carol will always get the money in which she trusts, like Davecoins. But still, Bob would like to have its oranges. How the oranges go to Bob?
By paying. So before he had 10 Bob coin. He spent one to buy the orange, right? Now he has 9 Bob coin. It's just that when he spent his 1 Bob coin, what he did was he gave it to Alice. He took her Alice coin. He gave that to Dave. He took his Dave coin, and he gave the Dave coin to Carol. But at the end of the day, Carol has 11. She had 10 before, and Bob has 9. He had 10 before. So money has flowed through the system, just like in the real economy. And then he gets his orange. Let's say that they're literally next to each other, and she hands him the orange. So it's still a payment. It's still spending money. It's just it makes a few hops, and it basically transforms on its way to Carol.
And what does it mean to trust someone? What are the conditions for trusting? Because you introduced yourself. I know you exist. I know your name is Andy, or you said so.
You should not trust me.
That is enough.
You should not trust me.
Okay.
Because I could be a liar, I could be a sneaky person, I could have 2 accounts. When you trust somebody, you say, I know that this is not a person who makes fake accounts, or this is not a person's fake account. This is somebody who has earned my trust in the real world. I haven't earned your trust. There are people in the world who have actually earned your trust, and you know that they are honest people. And those are the people that you directly trust. These are the people that you say, this is a real account, this is real money, and this is somebody that deserves basic income. Everybody deserves basic income, but this is real money and is not a fake account. So it's a big responsibility on the user. You know, it's not like Facebook. We could become friends on Facebook before the end of today. You know? I wouldn't mind that at all. But if you ask me to trust your currency, I would say I can't. I'm sorry, I don't know you like that.
And if the fake accounts trust each other,
wow, this is great. This is awesome. Okay, let's do it. Yeah, let's move on to that attack. Right. By the way,
Sybil attack.
It's a Sybil attack. Yeah. So the term for this in computer security of fake accounts is called a Sybil attack. And it goes back to the first instance of split personality disorder. It was a story about a woman named Sybil. So it's one person with lots of personalities. So we're going to do a Sybil attack, right? So we have a normal network. Great, everybody trusts everybody. So anybody can spend with anybody. But Bob is evil. And Bob makes a few fake accounts. And he trusts all of them and he makes them trust each other. Now we have this graph, right? These are real people over here. This is Bob, evil Bob. These are all of his fake accounts over here. They all trust each other. I think for the purposes of this example, we will assume that Bob has not tricked anybody into trusting his fake accounts. They only trust Bob's real account. But he made fake accounts in a sneaky way and didn't tell anybody. Now this means that Bob is getting 4 currencies worth of money right now, or 4 currencies worth of new currency, right? 4 people's worth of new currency. Lots and lots of new currency, but this is all fake. It's all fake money. How do we keep it fake? So let's say Bob has 10 Bob coins, 10 real Bob coins that are actually trusted in the world. Alice is selling a car for 1,000 coins. She wants 1,000 coins. And these accounts over here, they all have 500 coins each because he made them a while ago and they've just been minting and been building up. Right? So he has enough currency to buy this car. What is he going to do? He's going to do a mediated exchange, right? A transitive exchange. He wants to, by the way, let's make some arrows. Maybe that was pointless, but he's got all his coins, and he's going to try and trade them. Remember, money always moves in the opposite direction of trust. So we've got trust going here, and then we've got trust going here. Actually, let's just make this 500 for the sake of being simple. So we've got 500 here. We've got something that costs 500 over here. Let's do a mediated exchange, right? The first thing that his fake account has to do is it has to swap with Bob's because Alice only trusts Bob's currency. And here we get to the security of the system. Bob only has 10 Bob coin, and Alice only accepts money that she trusts, which is Bob coin right here. So even though he made a bunch of fake accounts and he counterfeited a bunch of currency, he can't exchange through Bob because Bob doesn't have enough currency units. He only has 10. So the real graph of real people is only ever exposed to 10 units worth of currency because that's the only thing that they trust. So this money is worthless. It can't do anything. Suppose that she had something that was actually 10, cost 10, right? Like a book or something. Now, he can use his fake account. He can swap. And so then Bob would have 10 fake money, and Alice would have 10 Bob coins. But he could have just spent his Bob coins. He could have just sent them directly to her. He didn't get anything extra here. Doesn't help him in any way. So as long as people trust real people, it doesn't matter how many fake accounts you make, the money that people are exposed to is always limited by how much money you actually have. This is the primary security measure of the system. This is what makes it Sybil resistant, it's called. You can't ever counterfeit currency and spend more than the trust that you've actually earned in the real world. More questions?
But you can always find a way to Alice believe that.
Yep. Yep, that's true. Yeah, you're right. Trust is, in this system, trust is probably the most serious it will ever be, right? Like, you take a financial risk whenever you trust anybody, actually.
So I think the foundation is about identity. If you find a way to create the account with real person, real identity, maybe.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's a lot of teams.
But this is not easy, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. No. There's a lot of teams in the world that are not circles that are working on the idea of decentralized identity and blockchain identity and other digital identities, right? And any one of them can work with Circle, right? If I have some sort of reliable digital identity, and I say, hey, you can trust me, and I show you a reliable digital identity, and it can somehow prove that this is my one account, that's a different story. But in this one, we don't have any of those assumptions, right? All we can rely on is people's natural trust for each other. And again, this is related to this primary usability thing. There's one concept that I want to talk about between those two concepts, but I'm going to keep answering questions for now. Go ahead.
Okay. Elizabeth here is saying keep it local. The risk is minimized. The question here is, I think, Hero is not collapsible. If the Hero collapse or dollar, we have big problems.
Yeah.
Does this system is collapsible?
Yeah, it's resilient.
Resilient, yes.
Exactly. And this is actually exactly why it was made. It was made to be resilient. So if some sort of large organization grows and everybody starts depending on it, but they have good, responsible trust relationships at the same time, then even if that network collapses, like the euro, right? If it breaks up, because you still have these trust relationships with people that you actually knew and grow up with, for instance, then you can still have a local economy, even if the larger system fails. It works because it works from the bottom up, and it works in this grassroots way. A local relationship is never polluted by a larger non-local relationship.
And because it's a decentralized system, if it's not a bank, there's no bank that will bankrupt, so you will not lose your coins.
Yeah.
The rest of them.
And another thing, maybe you already talked about, but speculation. One thing that I notice in these kind of coins is the value goes up and down and collapse and goes up again. This system, what is the measure of this system for avoiding this?
Well, when it comes to things like Bitcoin, the reason that it is so crazy volatile is because there's a finite number of Bitcoins that there will ever be, 21 million. There'll never be more. And like gold, there's a finite amount of gold. The supply doesn't change, so when demand changes, it changes the price. Price is always supply where supply meets demand. So if the supply is not changing, but the demand is constantly changing, then the price will constantly change. But because Circles is always being minted forever, This idea of having a finite reserve of circles, it doesn't exist. Now that doesn't mean that the demand might be different from the supply. And a big open research question that we have is, should the inflation rate change to stabilize the currency? I don't have an answer for that at all, but this concept of buying a bunch now because it will be worth a lot more in the future doesn't really play in the same way, because it's not the sort of thing where it's going to run out and now everybody wants some, right? If you want some, you just sign up and get some yourself. You don't need to buy it on the market. Like for Bitcoin, if you want some, you have to go buy it somewhere from somebody else, and everybody knows that. But in Circles, if you want some currency, you just sign up. And as long as you're being honest and you can get real people to trust you, then you'll have currency. Yeah.
Two questions in my mind. First of all, the newborn babies, when they come to the game, how will they start? And secondly, kind of introduction. For example, you start today, but I start next month, so I am late, so maybe my units will be less. And the one is trust within the family. We said the son is trusting her mom and mom trusting the son, so there's a link. But I mean, sometimes within families, this may be a problem. I mean, it may be a big problem. And also, organized crime, like organized manipulation is possible.
Manipulation? Do you mean something different from crime?
Yeah, manipulation, they cannot say it's a crime, not like speculation. But for example, this Bob, he has 3 people around, and another maybe a gang, and this gang may have fictitious accounts, and
and they all trust each other.
You know, they can be organized to convince others to trust these fictitious names.
Oh, you mean like threatening them or something like that?
Pardon?
You mean like with the threat of violence or something?
No, for example, maybe they are telling her about a very interesting opportunity. You can buy this orange instead of 2, you can buy with 1 coin. So this thing that, they are trusting people, so they are referencing him, so she will start making trade with them. But after some time, instead of oranges, they will start trading cards, and then she will lose the game. I mean, these are all possible. I mean, quite new for me. Too many questions, but the babies is...
Okay, so babies, okay, actually, I think all of these questions are actually pretty much related. And they're related to changing the way that people think. Circles requires you to think about the world in a different way. And that, it may be a problem in the future, but it's unavoidable. You have to think about money differently, you have to think about trust differently, you have to think about your social relationships differently. It's really like leveling up just the way that you think about society, sort of. And so things like random strangers trying to convince you to trust accounts, you should instantly say no. Like, it's like spam email, right? It's just no, like, no, what are you talking about? If you got a spam email, buy Viagra from Mexico, everybody in the world now has learned, I don't respond to this. You're full of shit. Like, I don't do that sort of thing. And it's a learned behavior that is through all of society. So there's many, many things that people are going to have to learn in Circles in order to be conscious, responsible citizens, right? And you've identified a bunch of them. Another one, newborn babies, right? I wouldn't trust a child. You know, I wouldn't trust a child because they're not ready for the responsibility of being sort of like a member that has a basic income. I mean, this gets into sort of all sorts of interesting political questions about, do children deserve basic income? I think probably not, but that's just sort of like my personal opinion, and I would create trust according to that. If you do, I mean, go ahead. I don't really care. I'm always going to get money that I trust, and so it doesn't matter to me who you trust. To sum it up, I think, I will say, as long as you, as an individual, make the right choices in who you trust, you will always receive good currency. If somebody else makes a mistake and they trust the wrong person, they get punished, they receive bad currency, they basically get robbed, but you aren't harmed. Only people who make mistakes get harmed in this system. You, as long as you are responsible, you always receive good currency. So it's definitely going to be a learning experience for society, but the system isn't as fragile as you might be worrying, I think, because it's very decentralized. So local information stays kind of local rather than spreading to the whole system and polluting everything.
In fact, the idea of centralization is not really true, because you have some nodes that are more important than others.
This is great.
You can control the network, etc. And for you to really trust on the network, you have to have a node. And to have a node, sometimes it costs money, and you have to have a lot of knowledge to manage this. So this is still.
It's not a perfect system. Definitely not a perfect system. It has. I would say that it has more trustworthy characteristics than the current system, but I wouldn't call it perfect. You're right about that. Go ahead. Question back.
Does the system check the quality of the products that get exchanged?
Well, that's you're the consumer. You check the quality of the product.
Well, I was just thinking of Bob and his band of non-existent rich people. If he says, "Oh, I'm selling them a car for 1,000 coins every week," so the fake accounts send Bob 1,000 coins for the non-existent cars, then Bob would get all the money from the fake account.
I don't understand. Can you repeat the attack that you're describing?
Like earlier, you said
Alice is selling the
the money from the fake accounts can't enter the system because Bob only has 10.
Yeah.
If Bob says, "Oh, I'm selling a car and that's worth 1,000 coins, and my fake accounts will give me their coins,"
It doesn't.
the car doesn't exist.
Oh, but fake coins don't. It's not like they transform. It's just that if Bob, if Bob transfers all of his coins to him, the other people don't trust him because this graph is sort of it's not telling the whole story, right? In this graph, it looks like people are trusting other people, but it's really people trust currency. You make a choice: do I trust Bob coin or do I trust fake coin? So if Bob has a bunch of fake coin, it doesn't matter to you. You can't accept it. He can't use it on you in any way. So if Bob transfers all of his fake coin to his account, it doesn't really change anything because nobody trusts it.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a very subtle point, but yeah, it makes a big difference.
I still don't understand how the currency turns into money.
This is easy for you. This is not too complicated. Because it's not the technical stuff. It's easy to solve that problem.
I would call it. I would say it's kind of a mental thing, really. It's if you want. I mean, really, it's if you sell things, and I describe the system, and it sounds like it kind of works to you, then you can make the choice to say, okay, I accept it, and I have confidence in the system, and I will sell things for this. So it's really it's a social question of how it turns into money.
It's not technical.
It's a question of confidence. Yeah.
My question is mainly, how does this kind of new currency really help basic income?
Because
if you add amount of money, normally there will be inflation.
What did you say?
If you add amount of money in economy, is it some of nowadays currencies or this kind of currency, there will be inflation.
There is inflation in this system.
Yeah, of course. But I don't know what this really gives to basic income.
Well, it changes how money is created, and instead of being created by commercial banks by lending out money, all new money is created by giving it directly to real citizens. It's the only way that money is created in the system.
But anyway, it's possible for you to create the rules that you want in the system. You are the ruler of the system, and you can build the rules inside the system. So if you decide for example, the amount of coins that are produced, you can just control this quantity. It's in the code. It's software. So everything is possible. It's just programmed.
And I have here one question. You talk about the infinite nature of this coin, but we live in a finite world. Yes. Do you have any measure to avoid this currency have
No value?
yes?
I would say that it works the same as the modern economy, where prices rise at the same time as the money supply rises. So if Circle's launched today and one apple costs 1 circle, 10 years from now, 1 apple might cost 10 circles, but everybody's just getting more. So nobody's really affected by it.
It's getting more depends on the rules that you create.
Yeah.
So you have to create the rules from the start. If you don't do this, it will be a problem. Of course, you can change the software later, but the problem is the ones that started before. And,
well, it depends, right? You can make it so that the inflation is unchangeable, immutable, if you want to, or you can make it so that some sort of regulator can set it.
Who is this guy who decides how the software works?
I would say that is our.
Who is is not centralized, no?
They're looking at it.
of course.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's an open source group, so it's any programmer really. It's people that come together and they make it. So Lulu and I, we work on this, right? And so someday in the future, we will code this. We'll make the code and we will publish it in the world. And if people like it, then they can use it.
Okay.
But let's say that he and I are idiots and we mess up something really, really crucial. And then somebody else comes along and they fix it, and then they have their own version, and it's not stupid, and everybody can use that one instead. It's really makes sense.
And you can create some rules of governance in the code. For example, depending on some votes, you can.
Okay, so you can have several systems competing with each other.
Also, you can invent whatever you want in this.
Once the code is.
One solution is to build the governance of the system inside the system in terms of software.
Yeah.
For example, you will have some people that will vote for a change, or just
So you have to, okay.
Yeah,
it's
you can make these systems
democracy
democratic,
in terms of the decisions inside.
So dictatorship as well.
Also, it's possible, of course.
I will ask 2 questions. One is you talk about the resilience of the coin, but this is more on a personal opinion. We as a society need to be more resilient. We cannot depend on, for instance, if Lisbon stop the distribution of food, we will not be very resilient. So I think we need local communities do this force or force. It's not the word. Helps as to choose local items and to trade locally. Or this is not.
No, this is relevant. I think. Yeah, this does make it easier to trade locally. I think, and once I've answered all the questions, I think I'm going to move on to this thing that I keep referencing but not explaining, which is the usability.
That's the second question, I think.
Yeah,
that is, how is the implementation, and how can we easily do this? Because if I go to my mother and say to her, we have a new coin, please use it.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, for sure. In fact, I would say that usability is the most important thing. Economics are important, the blockchain is important, all of this stuff is important, but in order to make it so that anybody cares about this, it needs to be a very smooth, very intuitive, very usable experience. And actually, of all the things that we're researching as a group, I personally think that front-end app development, like making a really smooth experience on your phone, is the most important one. And it's actually even the most difficult one. People say that, designers they're more like artists than scientists sometimes. Sometimes people say this. I completely disagree. This is a difficult problem. making it so that circles make sense to your mom.
Yes.
Good luck to us, right? I don't have answers right now, but this is an important aspect of the system.
Your mom use email?
She uses Facebook, I think. And
We have to be like
that's all.
Facebook. We have to be like
For example,
Facebook.
you have this, you have the internet. You know the internet is so few people use at the beginning, then when you get a really massive use on the when appear the web, and there was one protocol that is now used for the email. That in a certain time it was necessary to have email because your friends had email and your company had email and you received email from the taxes report, etc. So it makes it was a common thing, the email at a certain point. But with this technology it will be the same. When it will be necessary for you to have a wallet to have your coin, then you will be.
Another thing that I would say is that all these diagrams that I'm drawing are pretty complicated, but from the user's point of view, there's really only two things that you have to sort of display to them, right? The first one is, do you trust him, her, him, whoever? And this is important, right? You explain to them it's important that you take this seriously. Do you actually trust them? And if we can explain that well, then the only other thing that we have to explain is just a simple payment flow, right? Like Carol has oranges, Bob wants them, he goes up, he has X, Y, and Z coin in his wallet, and he says, I want to buy some oranges. The system figures out a path between Bob and Carol, and it does it automatically, and then from her point of view, it's just, whoop, like you've exchanged, he's got the coins he wants, and then passes the orange, right? We don't have to make it manual or anything like that. A lot of it is automated. So if we do our job right, it will be as simple as PayPal. It'll just be a simple payments app.
Okay.
Even though on the back end, all sorts of crazy sci-fi complicated stuff is happening. But from the point of view of the user, it's just a payments app.
But it requires a kind of digital wallet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the problem at this time is that for you to trust the system, you need to have a node. If you don't have a node, you have to trust a third party. So this is a big problem. And when the price to have a node is very low and everybody can have a node, maybe you will have something.
I would say that light client.
At this time is not so easy because we have to trust a third party to believe that the system is right.
I would say that with light client proofs and things like this, I mean, yes, you're right. You still do have to trust third parties, but
always a third party to trust.
Yeah, it is, but it's not the same as like trusting Facebook where you're paying.
There are some technical solutions to the problem, but it's not an easy thing to solve.
Basically, my opinion is that in the future, most citizens will use light clients. Businesses and institutions will use full nodes, and I think that that is enough to bootstrap the system. That's my opinion. Okay, more questions?
I have two questions, but first of all, even between two neighboring states, the purchasing power differs. So PPP purchasing power differs. Secondly, if somebody dies, what will happen? I mean, maybe within the family they don't trust each other, but one of them dies. What will happen to the USD? Another thing is, what about, will there be a loaning system, or will there be an interest rate? Will there be any companies?
You can build up.
You cannot, for example, that lady is selling the orange to them. They're all person-based, so personal currency. But if there are companies, will there be company currencies? I mean, too many questions in mind. But the main point is,
this is how you know it's good. It makes sense.
Like my friend, main point is how it will be related to the basic income. I mean, how the resource to distribute will be introduced.
Repeat that question.
I mean, for example, a certain number of units. You will scan it through the month. Next month, what will you do?
You will get more.
Will there be a third authority or a governing authority who will collect some kind of tax and redistribute it? I don't know. I don't know how it will be sustained. I mean, I couldn't, maybe I don't, I'm not very familiar with it, but I couldn't see the point in this concept and the basic income. Yes, maybe in the future.
Okay, there's a lot there. Let's start with your last question, because I think that's the most important one. When I answered his similar question, what I had said was, in this economy, all new money creation is distributed directly to citizens. There's no other way to make new money. The only way that you can make new money is by being a regular person, and new money is created and distributed directly to you. So it's a system that has an inflating money supply, and all of that new inflating money supply is being distributed directly to individual people with real needs and real desire for basic income, people that deserve a basic income. So the way that it is, the only way that it is connected to basic income is the fact that money creation is distributed directly to citizens first. It starts at the bottom, and then it gets traded from there, wherever. But what about that still confuses you? Well, how do you feel that it is not related to basic income?
So can I summarize what I understood? Is it like when you have increasing units?
Mm-hmm.
This is a kind of inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Inflation is in fact a kind of indirect taxing.
Mm-hmm.
So it is like you don't collect tax, but you inflate money.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
But I know it will be.
That's actually a good way to look at it.
Too many missing points. I don't want to make everybody do this.
Yeah, it's a complex stuff. It's not only the technology. It's
economics too. Yeah.
Economics. It's rules.
Politics, ethics, morality, philosophy.
So the money is created in a centralized way, and everybody gets a set amount.
No, it's created in a decentralized way, and everybody gets a set amount.
But by a centralized system.
By one computer program on a decentralized network that no individual controls.
Well, if everybody gets the same amount, some central thing is deciding what that amount is.
Okay, so you missed the first part. Blockchains. Do you know what a blockchain is? Does anybody? So we've got I'd say about the back half of the room arrived late. So I'm going to do a really quick primer on blockchains really quick. Does anybody here in the back half of the room know what a blockchain is? You do a little bit. Have you ever heard the term before? Yeah, you've heard the term? Okay. So a blockchain is a decentralized database. So databases, they run our entire lives. Banks, governments, Facebook, everybody stores all their data in a database. It's just a computer that you can read and write from over a network, right? So you can write to it like when you make a Facebook post, and you can read from it when you read your friend's Facebook post. Pretty standard. In the modern day, the way that databases work is that there's one database, and all computers connect to it to read and write. This is centralized, like you said. If I was making circles 20 years ago, this would be the only option available to me. Today, we have a technology called blockchain. A blockchain is a database that no one computer owns. All computers in the world that are connected to it, they own it together, and they update it and they maintain it together. It's a database that is maintained by a symphony of computers working together in concert. And if I create an update to it, every other computer updates their local copy in lockstep. In lockstep, we march along into the future and maintain this database together. It's very similar to a torrent, except a torrent is read-only. On a blockchain, you can write as well. So although it is one computer program that everyone is coordinating around, it is not centralized in the sense that there's some governing authority that gets to decide things about it. It's decentralized because no one individual controls it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but how do you control that the money creation? You said that everybody gets the same amount of money at the same time.
Yep. You create a computer.
Who decides that rate? And
It's in the software.
What?
The software. It's in the rules.
So the central authority is in the software, not in the people making it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. There's a computer program. Whatever the rules are at the beginning when it's launched, those are the rules forever.
So there is a finite amount at any one time. It just increases. The finite amount increases over time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, can we see that like in the existing status? There are banknotes signed by the bank. And we are using while making our transaction. But in this case, we are signing our own banknotes, and we are all becoming a bank.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
And the problem is, we are a bank, but somebody else, another authority, is deciding when I will sign it and how much I can sign it. That's
Yes.
apparently
Except that it's not somebody, it's a robot. It's one robot, and everybody in the world coordinates around it, and it never changes the rules.
For example,
It's called a Schelling point, actually, is what it is.
For example, in some organizations, like non-profit organizations, you can have an internal money.
Yeah.
That also works. It's a circle of trust, and this works. So I think what he's proposing is something like that, but at a large scale, and using blockchain as the tool to build this idea.
And I reached Circles 2 weeks ago, I think, because I was brainstorming with a friend about the idea of creating a platform for communities. And the idea was, in 5 minutes, I create a community with the shared economy and marketplace with people I know. And it was it would be useful for this to have easily a local coin. And sure, I will search for it. Maybe it's easy. But the thing is, these circles was the project I found that there was.
How did you find it?
Google it.
That's awesome. I didn't even know we were on Google.
But I think that going local and distributed, because this is one coin, but we could approach the idea of usability by doing these communities.
Oh yeah, totally.
And also yes, that's the idea behind. And also we could have a voting system. I know that blockchain can handle this. Maybe it's not the scope of the Circles.
No, it's totally in scope for Circles.
Yes, so you could do votes with this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But in terms of technology, you are using this Ethereum as the base for this idea?
I would say that currently Ethereum is the best option. But 1 year from now, if something's better, we'll use that.
Maybe it's more easy, but I'm not sure it's the best.
Okay, yes, easier option. That's really good. Yeah, good point. It's the best place to experiment, I would say.
Yeah.
So wait, before
I don't think it's the right solution for this case. And
I want to talk to you later because you seem pretty knowledgeable about consensus. But I also.
If it's for experiment, it's okay.
Yeah, I also don't think it's the best case either. One more thing, really quickly, to answer your other two questions. If somebody died, I just wouldn't trust them anymore because of all that currency is sort of like not associated with a person anymore. And then lending, you can build that on top. This is sort of like a foundation thing. So if you want to do lending or banking or whatever else, you can totally do that on top, and it just works fine. They're composed, right? So we have this system. If it works, then we compose more complex economic instruments on top. And you want to ask a question?
My question is, how do you get from those individual currencies to some common money? Because if it's only those who I know, I can deal with. I basically can't do anything in modern economy.
Yeah.
90 or 99% of my money goes those who I don't really know.
Yeah.
If I come from Finland to here, I know nobody in Portugal, and I must be able to buy everything.
Okay, that's great. Let's transition to the next feature. This is the one that I've been promising to tell you about this whole time, and now we get to it. The primary usability feature. And it's called delegated trust, or validators. Who's excited to learn about validators? Okay, so there's one more feature in the system that solves this problem It solves the problem of community governance, solves the problem of usability and how much your currency doesn't work at first, and then you need to add trust to it. It tries to solve the problem of the identity, right? Proving who you are in some sort of way. And it's all through delegated trust, okay? So before, the system I've been describing, it's about direct or indirect trust relationships. So I trust somebody, and then I get access to the people that they trust. Right? And this is a currency, and this currency is over here, and this is a currency. It's money that's sort of flowing around and being exchanged. And everybody has access to currencies that they trust. And importantly, they're all currencies, right? You're always trusting currency. You're not trusting people. The system that I've described so far, you're always trusting currency, and you're never trusting people, right? And now I'm going to change that. Oops. And we'll give them names. Okay. And this one we will call Lisbon. Interesting. Okay. Remember, what I've described so far is a system where users trust currency. And by that trust, actually, to answer one of your questions, imagine that everybody in the system trusted everybody else. It's a contrived example because it would never be true, but
never is true.
Imagine that somehow I could psychically connect and know that your one account was really your one account, right? And everybody was connected to everybody. In this example, if everybody was connected to everybody, we would have one money. The system converges on one money because there is no difference between your coins and my coins. It makes no difference to me. So this is obviously ridiculous. It's not actually how it would work out, but it's useful to examine because there's two sort of like points to the system. In the zero case, nobody trusts anybody, and all the money is useless. In the infinity case, everybody trusts everybody, and we all have one currency. So you're on a spectrum. So the more trust you introduce into the system, the closer you get to one money. I only wanted to bring this up because you were saying, how does this kind of become one useful money? And it's all about increasing the amount of people that can trust each other. Now, like you said, it's not realistic to do that by only trusting your mom and your brother and your wife, right? Like, that's not gonna, you're never gonna be able to get to Lisbon and start transacting with people because there's just there's not many people in Finland that know people in Lisbon. It's a small group of people. So we need some other way to figure it out. And that's where these validators come in, this concept of delegated trust. Now, just to repeat, in the system I've described so far, users are trusting currency. But now, users can trust accounts. They can trust other actors in the system. A validator, that's what this is, that's what this triangle is, a validator. A validator does not make a currency. It's not a concept. They don't have a currency. They're an organization, right? And the way that it works, you can see from the graph. You can probably guess what's happening here. But if Alice trusts the Lisbon validator, and the Lisbon validator trusts Carol, Carol can now spend money to Alice. It's as if Alice trusted Carol directly. Because it's delegating trust. Essentially, When Alice trusts Lisbon, she says, anybody that you trust, I trust. I trust you in a way that I allow you to delegate my trust to anybody. And I may change my mind in the future. I may not trust you. But for now, I want your network to become my network. And it allows you to very, very quickly create a very large network. If there was one validator that has validated everybody in Lisbon, then if you want to sell products in Lisbon, it's very easy for you to just trust that validator. As long as you trust the validator, and as long as they do a good job of making sure that these are all real accounts and not fake accounts, then it's very, very easy for you to access that market. And Lisbon is obviously a large example, but we can make smaller examples. We can make a validator for your neighborhood, for your apartment building, for all the electricians in Lisbon, for all the electricians in Europe. You can make one for all of Europe. You can make one for the whole world. And it's up to you to decide which ones that you trust based on how they do their job. But the most important thing, like my friend over here said, is that the way that this is run can be arbitrary. It could be democratic. It could be run like a business with a CEO. It could be run according to some sort of betting market or something crazy like that. It could be run. Randomly. You could just randomly trust people, you know. And you, as an individual, you make decisions about who you trust. Which validators you delegate your trust to. And this is the primary usability element in the system. Because if there was a new user, right?
You can even have escrows on the way that mediate the transaction and prove if you've received the product, then the other receive the money.
Totally. Well, let's say Dave is new, right?
Yes.
Just signed up for the system, right? Dave can obviously get his mom to trust him. That's not that hard. Or his wife, or his brother. But Dave needs access to a larger network quickly because we want to make his money valuable as quickly as possible. So what Dave really, really is going to do, the most realistic thing that he's going to do first, is he's going to say, he's going to go to the Lisbon validator. He's going to say, I want you to trust me. And the Lisbon validator is going to say, you need to prove to me who you are and that you live in Lisbon. So now you're all of a sudden, I've introduced something that looks very similar to the state. Do you see how that's happened? It's higher order organizations of people that aren't really profit motivated. This isn't a business. This is just somebody that is, I mean, it could be a business, but most likely it's just going to be a boring government office where you go and prove who you are, just like you do all the time. You do 5 times a year. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You see where this is going? This is the state in circles. So what you do is you come to the thing, you say, here's my ID, here's my state issued ID, and they even take your fingerprint or something like that. They really, really want to make sure that there's only one Dave account in the system. They don't care if you get a fake account elsewhere, because they're not going to validate it. As long as there's only one Dave in the system, this network, this validator's network is safe. And you can have, like I said, you can have a Lisbon one, you can have another one for Finland, and these can trust each other. You can make another validator up here for Helsinki.
But this brings another problem. If this central validator decide to ban you lose everything.
Right. That's correct.
No. Is it like the factoring company?
What is it?
A kind of factoring company? Factoring.
Factoring?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a factoring company.
When you receive a product, you give a check for a future date.
Oh, yeah, like quality assurance?
No, not quality assurance, but factoring company say, okay, we check that company, they are capable of paying this check in the future. After 2 months, so I will pay you 95% now, instead of receiving after 2 months.
I don't know if that's related. I need to think about it because I don't really understand what you're saying. But,
so this validator, in fact, is letting David to enter into the business.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
But in the meantime, as you said, I guess you think some person shows.
Yes. I want to answer your. I think that you're right. I'm not completely sure, but I'm pretty sure that you know what you're talking about. To answer your question, if he kicks him out, then he's screwed. But remember, this is just one validator, right? It could be many. So you can have one for your neighborhood, you can have one for Europe, you can have this one, you have all sorts of different ones, and it's very cheap to set up a validator too.
If you have two nationalities, you can
Sort of.
be just by your second nationality.
Sort of, yeah, exactly. And another thing is that Dave wants to protect himself from being kicked out by an important validator, right? Because if he gets kicked out, then he's in trouble. So Dave still wants to have a good trust relationship, good direct trust with the people that he loves. Because let's say that, let's say realistically that there's this many people that he truly trusts. I think that that's pretty close to the number of people that you really trust in the world, something along this. Not many more than this. As long as he has these relationships and everybody else in this network is responsible and does this too, they have a relationship with the few people that they really trust, and even if Dave gets kicked out by here, he's not totally screwed. He can still spend money in a certain way. It's not as good. It's not as good as this, but it's not nothing either. It doesn't completely break.
But also the level of trust can be increased in a certain way. Depends of people action, for example.
What?
Depends of the people action, of the people behavior.
Yeah.
It can increase.
Yeah.
You can rebuild this in the system.
Exactly. So when somebody new comes up to me and they say, I want you to do business with me, I'm validated by the Lisbon validator and your local neighborhood validator and the European validator.
You can
okay, this is probably good.
Some points. The system gives you some points, for example.
Yeah. Right. You can have different sort of scales of trust. I can trust you a little bit, or I can trust you a lot. I can trust you somewhere in between.
If you had very good behavior with, for example, buying something in this store, and you always pay, for example, you get some points.
And also, to get back to Elizabeth, I hope that you see how this relates to these questions about local governance, right? Because it's a good local community will certainly have a validator, and everybody in the community will be able to trade with each other very, very easily by being validated by the local community validator. And if in my community, I will demand that it is run by the community, right? It's democratic and it works sort of in a way that has feedback, right, from the community. So this concept of delegated trust is where we get this idea of like local networks and local trade and community organization and community action and
Transition.
exactly, yeah. So it's very, very, the delegated trust is the political element of circles. Everything before that is sort of neutral economics. It's almost boring without it. But with delegated trust, you really, really get an opportunity to create higher order, extremely complex organizations.
This can go bottom up, yes. We could how could we go to the global? I think this should start from the bottom.
Let me show you how it would work. What's the neighborhood that we're in right now?
Intercampus. Yes, Intercampus.
So that's one.
Campo Líder.
Campo Grande.
You see what's happening here?
Yes. A validator of validators.
Exactly. Lisbon, if Lisbon is smart, they will only trust neighborhood validators, right? And it's very easy to meet everybody in your neighborhood and really have a really social relationship with them. And we can compose systems up, and it literally is grassroots. The world is made up of composed groups of people with real relationships with each other. So we can do that in the system, and we can build up all the way to national scale. We don't have to have a huge amount of bureaucracy to sort of get everybody into the same system. You just have to have relationships in your neighborhood, and then you compose those relationships.
Elizabeth is asking, does it has to be contributed?
I'm sorry, what?
Does it has to be contributed? Can you elaborate?
Yeah.
So maybe about the validation. If you want, I can turn on the mic. Okay.
I think she has.
Maybe she will elaborate and then I will
More
ask.
questions? I'm sure there's more questions, right? Yeah. Do you like it more?
Well, I like the idea of grassroots money,
Cool.
but I don't like the idea of many currencies, because I have seen the time in Europe when we had very many currencies, and it was really complicated for me. I was businessman that time. To trade, for example, with Soviet Union. The official cost of Finnish mark was 7 marks for 1 ruble. The unofficial was 7 rubles for 1 mark. And there were 20 different exchange courses between those.
Yeah.
So basically, you are from strong currency US. We are now in strong currency Euro. And they have benefits against that very diverse currency system. I'm afraid that would lead to very complex currency system, not one money.
So remember that the system is enforcing a one-to-one exchange rate. So let's say that you have currency over here, and I have currency over here. We want to do some trade, and there's some sort of relationship between us. If you demand some sort of exchange rate, you want 2 of my money for every 1 of yours, I can say, why would I do that when I can just do it automatically through the system? The fact that the system enforces a one-to-one exchange rate between all trusted currencies makes them actually literally all the same.
Yeah, but I have seen the official fixed currencies, which really don't work in real world. And I'm afraid this would lead to the same kind of situation.
Where people don't want to work through the system?
Basically, we had fixed currency exchange rates.
But it wasn't enforceable.
But the real exchange rates were weak. Those official, and if it leads to one money, very good. But if it leads to Portuguese money being only half of German money, it's not so good.
I agree with you. We want to wind up with one currency. Do you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, basically, I mean, the big difference that still the currencies are personal. Yeah, so there is no kind of systems where a state fixes the currency for all its subjects. I mean, that was the problem with the fixed currencies, fixed rates.
That was the problem, but the other problem was...
May I finish?
Yeah.
I mean, sorry. So, of course, the problem was that the theoretical rate that was decided politically was not adjusted to the actual economic reality, yeah? But here that happens automatically, yeah? So you can always say, yeah, no, I'm not selling you this product at this price, but I'm selling you at a different price. So you don't get this thing that you need to adjust to politically set exchange rates.
Basically, the economy works automatically rather than politically. So this concept of politics being, like you said, out of sync with reality doesn't come into circles because there is no politics when it comes to the economy. There is politics when it comes to sort of these higher order trust relationships, but it doesn't change the exchange rate because it's really, at the end of the day, just people working with people. there's really no state in between them in the way that we think of it, in the way that it screwed up when you were dealing with the Soviet Union.
I think the question is, you said that for each validation transaction, each element gets a percentage because of his validation contribution.
You mean like tax or something like that?
I don't know. Maybe the idea is the proof of work in the Bitcoin, because of the transactions should be
transaction fees and stuff.
Yes, you need to have still the transaction.
No, I mean you do have transaction fees because you're broadcasting across a blockchain, but the idea of doing it, the validators don't get to set a special price or anything like that. They might charge you money to be validated. That might be the best system. You know, I'm not saying that one is better than another, but it might be the case that you have to pay a fee to be validated, and maybe that's some sort of tax and it goes into schools or something. You know, who knows?
Yeah.
I have no idea what is going to be the most popular validator.
Okay.
But the idea of every transaction, there's some sort of fee that is unenforceable in the system. It can't be, you can't do that.
And,
Just looking at the.
okay.
This has been a roller coaster.
Yeah, we are getting close to 2 hours. So
That's great.
And you do a brilliant job.
Thank you.
Still keeping your breath. I would suggest to see if there is maybe a final round of questions.
Sure, yeah. I think that's right. I've described everything in the system. I have no real surprises. The only one that I didn't go into was.
Sorry, and in that, I would suggest to see first if people who have not asked questions yet have questions.
I still have one question.
You can ask me later.
This is not related with you.
So who in the room has still questions?
Raise your
Sorry
hand.
about
Everybody, quietly raise your hand if you have
But
questions.
this is not related with the technology. Maybe it's not the right person.
Okay, so I'm right, you, Ali.
Anybody
Two
else?
more questions, anybody else?
Anybody else?
No.
I prefer to ask later. I don't want to.
Okay.
Everybody.
So, final question.
I don't know much about the universal income project. So I know very well the technology. But how is the movement trying to solve the question? Is with the help of the governments and politics, or is something that the community will build? This is very important for me to understand.
Your question is who's working on this and who's supporting it? Is that your question?
Yeah, I think probably it's more.
The
Yeah.
politics and the governments, or it's something that people will build?
I will.
A second. It's people.
Yeah.
Now, governments may.
No, it's people.
Yeah.
The movement is about people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Solving the problem.
Yeah, it's the system can work with governments. As I showed you, all those validators, that could be run by a government, right? And there's nothing about the system that sort of excludes governments, but there's nothing about the system that requires governments either. If the government never decides that they like Circles could still work just fine.
I think, if I may.
Because the basic income is obvious that it will happen. If it will not happen,
Not to
it will be
everybody.
chaos, because you see, because some of the people are not prepared for the new economy, so they will get lost. So
If I may ask, if I may answer your question, at least sort of on behalf of the organization that I'm representing, Unconditional Basic Income Europe, we at this moment work with those, at least who actually have money systems running. These are the governments. So we do lobby governments, but at the same time, as you see, we organize also meetings like this to learn more about alternative concepts. And I think in the end, the better system, the better offer will win. Yeah. So of course, if we start, if one fine day Circle is on the blockchain, everybody can sign up, everybody can download the app. it will start competing with the existing currencies. And if the government by that day have not solved the problem of introducing basic income, then they might be made irrelevant by this competing system.
Yeah, this can
So
be
we will see.
a technical solution for the government to implement.
Exactly. I think that in my ideal world, all of the governments are on top of cycles.
I
Just
think
like today, they're on top of SWIFT, right? Everybody's just on top of SWIFT. It's the foundation of the economy.
I think we should draw a
You
line
can
here.
ask me later.
No, not the question, but
Oh, yeah.
if kindly accepted, can we have a photo all together? So I will remember who asked what, because later on, we will,
Yeah.
maybe we'll see the,
Video, yes.
Oh, yeah. I'm happy to take a
so
picture.
for future,
Yeah.
communication for
Okay.
that, if you agree.
So we say goodbye to the viewers. Thank you for joining in.
Can you see this, everybody at home? Type it in the chat.
Yes, yes,
Chat.joincircles.net. It's maybe backwards on the screen, actually.
Chat, I already put it
We
here.
will also.
This is our online community. The regular Join Circles is like the product page. We have a wiki too, wiki.joincircles.net. But this is, if you care about nothing else, you can come here, you can talk to us, you can keep up to date with all the stuff. This is our online community. We are, the reason that I came to Lisbon was to get people into this strategy. So if you want to come and meet us, and you want to talk to us, and you want to talk more about this, this is the place.
Thank you very much.